I was mentioning to you about Nick Charles, who passed away a few weeks ago. I knew Nick, and the first time I met him was at Church of God. I mentioned to you he'd come to listen that morning, and he put his arm around me after that service was over, and he said, "Can I talk to you?" And then he says this to me. He said, "I've not been a good man. I've not been a good man." He said, "I've lived a very indulgent life, Ravi." He's a handsome-looking guy, an icon on television, admired by many. And he told me, he said, "The truth is I've not been a good man." He said, "Help me. Help me." We became good friends. We chatted, we talked, and the Lord worked in his life. He settled down and fell in love with a beautiful woman from CNN, also a producer. Her name was Corey. I had the privilege of uniting them in marriage. And after the wedding, a happy life had come to both of them. And a few years went by. He phoned me and he said, "Can I see you for a moment? I need to talk about something." So he and his wife invited me for lunch. I said, "Is everything okay?" He said, "We've got a problem. We need your help." I thought, oh my. So I went for lunch with sort of high degree of trepidation. And as he sat across the table, he said, "I have a question for you." I said, "What's that?" He said, "I'm much older than my wife, as you know, and she'd like to have a little baby. I don't want to become a father in my 60s. What do you say to me?" I said, "Nick, this is not fair." I said, "Getting you two married was okay as a minister." I said, "Now you're asking some tough questions of me." He said, "No, give me your advice." I said, "I can't give you advice. I can just give you one statement." He said, "What is that?" I said, "One statement to you is this, Nick. If you deny her this great longing and joy in her heart, you will never be a totally fulfilled man." I said, "That's all I want to say to you." Not long after that, a lovely little girl was born. Her name was Giovanna. Well, a little over 2 years ago, he phoned me. He said, "I really need help now. I've been diagnosed with cancer of the bladder, and they're giving me no more than 20 months. We talked, and before he left, he said, "I've always wanted to live in Santa Fe, always." He said, "We're going to move. I know I'm not going to make it much, but I want to move there, and Corey's willing to go. I want to take our little girl." And it was a move they made. Before I began my 7-week trip some months ago, he asked if I could come and see him before I left because he didn't think he would make it through the 7 weeks. So my wife and I flew into Santa Fe. And I sat down next to him because his whole body was just trembling is a minor word. He was just agitated like that. And a nurse was there trying to inject something into his bloodstream to get him to settle down. And as he was about to calm down, he reached out, grabbed my hand, and he said, "Please pray for me." So I held his hand and started praying. As I was praying with him, his dog came over and nuzzled next to my leg there. His dog's name is Dante. My wife was standing to my left with her arm around Corey's little girl, just helplessly not knowing what was happening to her father. And then he looked at me and he said, "Can you stay long enough for dinner?" I said, "I'm going to get out." He said, "No, I want to have dinner with you." We got him under control physically, and the four of us drove over for dinner. The poor guy, all the hair coloring from his face had gone. The hair was gone. And he told me this story. He said, "Ravi, a few weeks ago I lay in bed and I said, 'Jesus, enough. Enough. I can't take this pain anymore. Please take me home tonight. I cannot handle this.'" He said, "My little girl is lying next to me, Corey next to her." And I said, "Lord, you'll take care of her. You'll take care of Corey. I can't handle this anymore." He said, "In the deadness of the night, Ravi, I promise you this. A light shone in the corner of my room, and a figure, just as I've always pictured Jesus, came over towards me, sat where you sat when you held my hand." He said, "I promise you this happened." And he took my hand and he said, "Nick, I will call you home, but not tonight. I'll call you home at the right time, not tonight." He said, "The world may laugh at me, the world may mock at me, but I'll tell you something, that's what has kept me going." One of the producers from CNN phoned me a few days later. I was in Singapore. It was late at night. He said, I'm doing a story on Nick Charles. He said, what do you make of this story he tells of the night that he had this vision? I said, where are you coming from in this? He said, I'm an atheist. I said, let me say something to you. His faith in God is not based on that solitary experience of that night, but it confirmed for him that which he already knew in his commitment and relationship to Christ. And Jesus will always meet you where you need to meet him the most, in the quietness of your life, and he will meet you to fulfill what it is you need to know at that time. But your faith goes beyond just that moment into something more sturdy and solid, the Word of God that abides forever and so on. I said, now let me ask you this. What do you think of Nick Charles? I said. He said, he's for real. I said, then take him at his word. This experience too. So is it.